What's up, everybody? This is I think it's episode 5 or 6 of this podcast. Episode 6. See, I'm not even counting, right? Fighting Foolishness, Parker and Shay. You know what? This is an interesting week for the podcast. A lot has happened since the last podcast.
Yeah.
And Shay and I do this because we decided to open up our conversations that we have to the world because some of them we think are interesting. So we thought you guys would think they're interesting. And this week we kind of struggled because, so in the past week we've had the No Kings Day, right? Mm-hmm. Which was effectively it was multiple things happening at one time. Yeah. There were protests all over the country, really. Mm-hmm. And protests of kind of with the state of the country and what's going on, and they call it No Kings Day. And these were kind of counter protests to this military parade that our president had that kind of coincided with the anniversary of the military or the army or something.
It's the anniversary of the army.
And it happened to be on the same day as his birthday. And so he's like, let's have a military parade. And with the state of affairs, the country didn't like that very much for various reasons, not the least of which a lot of the political activity we're dealing with seems like a very heavy-handed approach to natural, average, everyday, run-of-the-mill problems that any state has to deal with responsibly. And there's a tone that's been set, and I think it's been set since 2008 or 2009, since the grand elevator, walking down the elevator, and our former president and this president had a spat having to do with this is when birtherism became a thing. Mm. And ever since then, there's been this attitude and energy about especially Black and brown people having to justify their place in their existence. And the approach that we're having in the country to mostly brown immigrants has been very heavy-handed. You're talking about ICE raids all over the country. We're talking about masked people. Let's just be clear. People are going into people's homes, into people's businesses with masks on, so they don't even want to identify themselves. School buses. And ripping families apart, ripping mothers and fathers away from children. And this is happening to to actual citizens that were born here. It's happening to immigrants that have legal status to be here. And I'm sure there is a percentage of people that it is happening to are people who don't have firm legal status to be here as well. And so there's a backlash in the country about all of these things. And it's really frustrating to watch because these are things that every single state, every single country, when I say a state, I mean even a country is a form of a state, I believe, like that. So any place where you have to maintain a certain level of rules and awareness around who's there and who belongs there and who doesn't. These are problems that are natural to deal with, and there is a way and method that we deal with them. And I would say it started with birtherism, where and before that, I mean, birtherism was actually a result of decades of fear mongering about immigration and people who weren't originally born here and their status here. Birtherism turned it into something else, and then now we've taken this to a whole nother level where there's a heavy-handed attitude to just force the people out, whether they have legal status or not. We don't see this happening with European immigrants. We don't even see it really happening with Asian immigrants, at least as far as what I've seen.
It is.
It is?
It is.
Okay.
It's happening. It's not happening as rampantly. It's not being advertised. And it's... the media is not...
helping.
The media is not... It is more sensational because to focus on Latinos, people from the Caribbean, so Haitians. So all of the countries that just recently got, and it was in the last 10 years. So Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and there's one other one I don't remember, that are in that Caribbean down to Central America. The people who were granted emergency visas, basically, it was just announced that those were
revoked.
I gotta remember to speak with my big girl voice, because there's that, I've seen some Asian influencers and people who aren't necessarily influencers who are talking about it, yet something to consider just from a psychology and sociology perspective. Asian cultures typically are silent in regards to abuse and injustices. They allow their economic power to speak to things that are going on with them. And so they will come together, they'll come together economically to attempt to sway something politically before we actually even knew it was an issue. So I don't believe that we will see a lot of, even if they, because from what I understand, Chinatown in St. Louis was targeted.
I did not know that.
So as well. Yeah. So I don't know what we will hear.
Well, and ultimately, kind of where I was going with that is that even in the idea of talking about this, we're sitting up here like we don't want to talk about this, and it's mostly, and it's not out of like an energy that is not important. It's more out of an energy of how do we get to a place where this is the thing that we talk about. It's not to say that immigration doesn't need to be managed, but what I think is important, even in what you just said, is that immigration seems to be like the chum of American politics. Like there's several things that in our politics that are like chum. It's like immediately it invokes a reaction in people, and if you're somebody that is very conscientious and very rule-oriented and even a bit, I don't want to say territorial from a negative standpoint, but just like, well, it makes, even just the thought, like it makes sense to know who's in the country, and if you're not supposed to be here, then you shouldn't be here. That sounds really responsible. However, there's so much in the middle of the immigration conversation that's never discussed publicly and that the news media doesn't really talk about, where it's easy to say that in the newest thing, and I'm not even going to say it's new because it's not that new, but one of the latest things is just saying they're letting rapists and murderers in the country, right? Which is...
Before we talk about it as an immigration thing, I would like to mention from a history standpoint, Oregon, California, Arizona, Nevada, Utah, New Mexico, Texas was all Mexico. 1845.
That's very recent.
So when it became not Mexico, the people did not leave, because all of the business that was happening in all of those territories, because here's the crazy part, that Texas to California up to parts of Oregon, over Utah, Nevada, down, all of that was one territory. Everything that was happening there the United States got as one huge territory that they fought and took from Mexico. I don't remember exactly how they took it from Mexico, but it was taken from Mexico. Everyone from there didn't leave. Most, and just thinking about the 1800s, there's no way for them to even know in a fast manner that they are no longer Mexico.
I never thought about that, but that's wild.
So
when you actually think through the problem.
Yeah, so I was like, I don't even like talking about it from an immigration standpoint because they were fucking here.
Yeah. Well, and that's just it. You know, it's fun. One of the newest things, and these are things that the average everyday person who's just sitting at home, goes to work every day, has a job, pay taxes, and then they go home and repeat process and maybe take a vacation once or twice a year. Like, people aren't really thinking about what it actually took to create the environment that's around them, right? And so, to your point, none of this land actually belongs to any of the people that are actually attempting to take a claim to it right now. It was all stolen. African Americans were brought here against their will over 400 years ago, and forced.
And even before that, there's documented Africans were here. Cain. They had come. They were here. They were trading. They were doing.
So there was both sides of it, right?
Yeah.
It's the part like the thing that I didn't say is this is why I don't want to talk about this, because ultimately, it's like watching this is infuriating and it's absurd. To watch the sideshow, because that's what it is. It is a sideshow of buffoonery, really. Like, the whole thing is a sideshow of buffoonery, because you got a group of people that are talking about immigration when it wasn't their land to begin with. They're not the native people here. The native people here, I mean, I'm sure they have all kinds of thoughts. Any land. They've been segmented again on little plots throughout the country called reservations. Right, that's where the natives were basically placed, and then you got another group of people that are sitting up here making laws and rules about immigration on land that wasn't theirs to begin with. And there are moments in this where I'm like Rodney King. I'm like, why can't we all just get along? But that's not the thing here. I mean, it's something that's born out of that's just creating a lot of frustration, confusion, and just deplorable behavior. And there's no reason, that anybody should allow this to stand for what it is. It's just so like we spent a while just trying to figure out, like, what are we going to talk about? And I was just like, hey, let's talk about it from this perspective, because that's generally how we actually feel about it.
And there are like 1,000 different. There's 1,000 different places to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yet you started talking about the narrative of racists and murderers, and
yes.
Before we started recording, I had just my intuition just dropped in, and I hope that people that I know in the Midwest, because I know people all over the place, but people that I know in the Midwest that was really hit hard by fentanyl, I specifically wanted to say that because in regards to, there is a narrative that it is always immigrants who are illegally smuggling in drugs and things of that nature. Most drug dealers are people that you know. One, the drug dealers are not the boogeyman in the boogeyman in the alleys. They're people that you know who are living life to what they're there trying to make money for whatever reason in that way. No one, I don't believe that there's anyone who's born with malicious intent who wants to hurt or kill anyone. Yet, I also know desperation. And I understand that desperation makes people do crazy things. The conversation about, and I know there's a conversation about drug mules. And just thinking about it. No, I'm just saying, I was literally trying to unfold this rapist and murderer.
Well, but the thing is, there's nothing to even unfold there because it's an absurd notion to begin with. It's not to say that people, that some nefarious people don't get into the country. Mm-hmm. But the point that I was at, where I was actually going with that, is that when you're paying attention, there was a time with all this immigration stuff where those first, I mean, let me just back up to why people, like, when I think about this, I think about the fact that you've got caravans of people. So it's not a small number, but but in the scheme of actual numbers, it probably isn't that big. I would love to get the actual number of people that are in a typical caravan. I don't, is it in the thousands? Do you know that typically?
So caravans start small. And they pick up groups of 20 to 30 as they move. So
do you by chance know around what the biggest number is?
The biggest caravan that was coming up, and that was before COVID, that I'd ever heard of. It had gotten to a caravan of 15,000. Okay. Now, with that said, they didn't make it to the border.
Okay, so let's just even go with the number of 15,000.
They got to Mexico's border with 15,000.
Okay, so you got 15,000 people that come from South America, right? So South America, for those geographically challenged, is south of Mexico. So we've got the United States, we've got Mexico, and then we've got South America. So these people walked because they're rarely driving or any sort of conveyance. They are literally walking. They're walking. And they are walking from South America. They get to the Mexican border. They cross. Some of them cross. Some of them don't. But we get the people that crossed into Mexico and walked across the entirety of Mexico.
So, fun times. When they got to Mexico's border, we brokered a deal with Mexico. Mexico weeded out
many of these people,
most of the caravan, and got it down to a few thousand.
And then those few thousand
didn't going.
Most of them didn't even keep going. And not only did they not keep going, when they got to the U.S.-Mexico border, we had a deal with Mexico for them to stay in Mexico and get processed in Mexico.
I was going to say they didn't have to come to the U.S. border because at the tip Mexico border, because of that deal, Mexico knew from there they made the offer there.
Right. So all of this stuff where people are fear-mongering about people entering the country and stuff, they never even freaking got here. And then the other part of this conversation that I don't think ever gets considered is all people think is America is this great, fantastic place to live. I'm glad to be here, don't get me wrong. But and this is paradise, and all these people are trying to encroach on our paradise and whatever that means to the people that have that thought, right? Mm-hmm. But the other side of that thought is, what do you think it took for people to actually walk across a whole freaking country to what in them is motivating?
And they didn't start next to Mexico.
They started south. They started in South America.
They started in Colombia. And that was where it was noticed. So they started, and some of them were from south of Colombia, but a lot of them came out of Colombia because there was a coup happening. So Colombia and Panama. Before they got to the United States, they crossed thousands of miles.
So just from a humanitarian standpoint, and this is the part where I think we both were sitting up here before the podcast, like, what the effort is this even about?
Like, why are we
even talking about this? From a humanitarian standpoint, if somebody walked thousands of miles to get to my door,
and ask for water and food.
Like I might, as opposed to just assuming that they're here to rape and kill me when I've got literally the border control and U.S. military and all the other resources. Like they're not coming to the border and just walking across. Like there are people there and they're asking for asylum. But I might also ask, like, okay, I might get curious about these people and say, what brought you here? I mean, there's nothing that even 15,000 people could do to actually disrupt the American economy. It's not even available at that number. So why do we have this energy and why do we choose to believe when politicians get on the TV and say rapists and murderers? It doesn't even make a lot of sense. Yet we're forced to sit up here and talk about it because it's being talked about on TV and the radio, frankly. And it's kind of frustrating, frankly. Not gonna lie.
You know, something that pissed me off today. So in the ICE raid, there was a news story on how Donald Trump instructed ICE to basically stop randomly picking up people. I didn't know that was...
Idea.
Yeah, I was like, I didn't know that like...
What the hell?
like...
Like, see, that, I mean, that by itself is so absurd. Like we really that's the thing.
So it was the thing said it was a 2-minute read, 2 or 3 minute read of, and I read it all, and I was like, this is really stupid. Yeah, that's not what pissed me off more. What pissed me off more is the National Guard was activated, and they were activated for 29 days, meaning that they don't get BAH, which means it's a housing allowance, and so it'll pay for their food and where they stay while they're there. And if they had been activated for 30 days, not 29, they also would have been eligible for military benefits after 6 months. Months after. Wait, hold on. There's more. But in the midst of all that, in the midst of what's happening in LA, do you know how many people ICE actually arrested?
Whatever you say is going to be so ridiculous. So just say it, because I don't know, but I'm sure you do. Otherwise,
18 people.
What? Stop.
So not only was the National Guard activated, the 700 U.S. Marines were activated, and there were 18 arrests by ICE.
Okay.
And I don't know how many people protested in LA yet. 18 arrests by ICE.
That's the dumbest. That is the most. So just to repeat what Shayla said in a slightly different way, right? To kind of expand upon what she said, I guess, and Barry and I, there is a military policies about how to about deployments mm-hmm. and what you actually like. So people when they join the National Guard, a lot of times they're joining for some incentive. There's educational incentives. Mm-hmm. They get paid for their back in the day it was like 1 weekend a month.
That's what it is.
And 1 week a year, mm-hmm. and you get to come and you get payment and you get certain military benefits
and you get
educational benefits.
Yep.
So it's a good deal for somebody who's trying to get those things. And ultimately, if you're actually in wartime, National Guard troops may be activated, and there are rules around when you are activated, how long they can send you out into theater before they have to pay you. Mm-hmm. And so my assumption based on what you're saying is that the rule is 30 days. Mm-hmm. So if you're deployed for 30 days or more, then they have to give you housing and they have to pay you, because you're literally giving up your life to go and be activated into military service. For the country, right? And so essentially what happened with these troops that were being activated in Los Angeles is they didn't they weren't activated for 30 days, they were activated for 29 days, which is right below the point where the government actually has to chip in. So they get to go work for free. From my understanding, they don't even get housing for that. The government is not required to even give them a housing allowance for that.
Yeah, it's lumped together. But yeah, no. And they likely traveled across the state, potentially.
In California is a massive state. It's either the largest or second largest state in the country, only competing with Texas.
Alaska.
Got it. My apologies. In the lower 48, largest or second largest territory wise. And so traveling from one end of California to the other is about 10 to 12 hours.
Oh, wow. I only thought it was 5, but...
Oh, no. I used to live in California, and I've actually driven that drive. And I remember it being at least 10 hours from Los Angeles to just like north of San Francisco. It's about 8 hours to San Francisco driving, roughly 10 to 12 to the tip. Yeah, it's not. It's very far. And so, saying all that to say that, Mr. President, why are you sending people to work and not paying them? And that's kind of it's not the first time we've heard of this happening. And it's like, and all of that energy, all of that, and see, and that's another thing.
Not to mention you helicoptered in ammunition. So, like, where you at, Doge? Where you at?
I mean, it's this would be the best comedy if we weren't actually living in it, because it's absurd, and for those people who don't know, like I happen to be with somebody that knows the kind of military and their process reasonably well, and even just looking at it from a point of simple logic and math, it's like to do all of that, and you just got 18 people in Los Angeles, which, just to be clear, Los Angeles is 2 hours flat almost.
From side to side?
2 hours to Tijuana. 2 hours to actual Mexico. And you only found 18 people? That is the dumbest thing that I have heard. This is why... clearly...
Look,
it gets more. No, I'm sure there is. I mean, I'm sorry, I misspoke. Because we're in a time where you can always find more stupid. Yeah. like it will find you.
Look, that's why we're fighting foolishness. And even though we didn't feel like it this week.
No, I mean, because what is that? No, but seriously, we're actually talking about this. We're actually talking about 18 people got arrested in the military deployment of the whole National Guard in California. And one other statistic that still boggles my mind, and you will hear me continually talking about this in the podcast because it's something that the average everyday American doesn't even, it's something that's so out of something that it's hard to comprehend. But the city of Los Angeles has a higher population than almost 40 of the U.S. states in that little area. So you're saying that you went into this... This is why it's dumb. You went into this area that has a higher population than over 40 of the states, and you only found 18 people. Then the bright ideas of whomever said, oh, let's deploy the National Guard and all the ICE people, when the local government told you not to do it, didn't listen. The governor told you not to do it. You didn't listen. You actually think you know better. You clearly don't. Because out of all of this foolishness, you got 18 people in the one city in America that has a higher population than over 40 of the states. So Missouri, where we're in, higher population, pretty sure. Mm-hmm. Pick a state. Higher population. The only ones that probably went over are like New York, Texas. Oh,
Georgia.
Is it Georgia?
I don't
even
know.
think it's Georgia.
No, not Georgia, because Georgia has I think 5 million in its metro, in Atlanta's metro. So and then,
But I think LA is in the double digits. But don't quote me on that.
Well,
I don't have my phone in front of me to double check.
Yeah, I was like, I don't have.
But I do think it's in the double digits.
Well, I only say that because people think of Georgia and Atlanta, there's also Savannah. There's also
True that.
There's a few other satellite cities, or a few other cities that have decent population centers.
But ultimately, like, I'm going to keep repeating that, because even somebody that's not from a state where you have to deal with high populations of people and the problems that you have with high populations of people, you're not I would call for a little bit of humility in saying, hey, maybe the people that are there that deal with this population every single day in and day out, and it's actually their job, to let them do their jobs. And this whole idea, I can go on and on and on. I'm going to start talking in circles, but it's crazy to me.
We also have the first documented the U.S. Marines detained a Army veteran on the way to the VA.
They've been detaining like elderly Army veteran, all the people.
That was in D.C. That was a protest.
Okay, but they still did it.
They did, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, this is out of the 700 Marines. So,
okay.
So the relevance of the Marines detaining the Army veteran, the Army veteran, there were 700 Marines deployed in LA.
And this is on top of the National Guard?
On top of yeah, you were saying National Guard. I'm like, sir, you're not understanding. He also deployed 700 Marines.
So we've got the National Guard and the Marines.
We have California's National Guard, and we have 700 Marines deployed. Now, yes, Camp Pendleton is right there.
Keep looking at it. It just gets more dumb.
They just walked down the street. I understand that they just had to walk down the street, go across a bridge, whatever. I understand that. Yet, Marines were deployed, and he was on his way to a Veterans Affairs appointment, and he had his earbuds in. He also had, I know them as blue blockers, those huge glasses. The huge sunshades on. So they're yelling stuff. He's not paying attention because he's not paying attention. He's just walking up he's running late for his VA appointment. And so he was detained because he didn't comply. So, of course, he missed his VA appointment. Anyone who's ever had a VA appointment, that shit, I literally had my blood pressure went through the roof when I realized that he missed his appointment because they kept him for a couple hours. It took you a couple hours to figure out who he was? Okay. Or maybe it took you a couple hours because the processes aren't in place. And so I'm not going to call myself a rule follower by any stretch of the imagination. Yet what I do understand is when processes are put in place and everyone knows not only what they're doing, but how they're doing it, things can happen smoothly. I'm grateful that the veteran who was detained was not killed or something like that, because, and honestly, probably the only reason he wasn't killed is because it probably was a peaceful, he was just walking fast. Yet, if there had been a group around him, or, if there had been, there's a whole lot of different variables. Yet, so the U.S. Marines were deployed in a city to assist an immigration department. I don't have words in regards to it, because if I just look at it from a monetary, it's easier for me to look at it from a monetary place, because if I look at it from an emotional place, I
see red.
I don't see red. I am an active volcano blowing my top.
Yeah.
Oh,
here's my
I needed, there was something I needed to Google and I couldn't, I was like, ugh. This is why I have my phone here, y'all. Not because I want to, because I'm like, I need to go, I want to know what this, we want to make sure we say the right facts. Nothing about this situation was wartime. And not only was it not war, and yep, I'm just going to go there. So, when you have a commander-in-chief who doesn't necessarily respect military service or doesn't have any, I don't know. I have no idea.
I do. I mean,
you know where I'm going.
Well, but I'm going to say this maybe from a different angle. It might be what you were going to say, because it's what I've been thinking this whole time. It's like what I hope that people in Middle America understand is that you are watching a very well-produced TV show. And it sounds, if somebody puts in your brain that immigrants are rapists and murderers, when we already covered how kind of absurd that is, just to die on that hill as a policy, it's kind of absurd, right? Just because most of them didn't even get in the country to begin with. They stayed in Mexico. But when you put that in people's brains, and then you have the media display every single day, we're arresting the rapists and murder, because that's what people think. That's ultimately the thought. It's like, you're arresting the people that have come here to hurt us, so it's okay. Mm-hmm. Even if it doesn't make any sense. Like, that's the thought if you really don't know, because a lot of people don't know people in the military. A lot of people aren't in situations on a daily basis where they have to deal with people that don't look like them, don't think like them, speak a foreign language, maybe not be here illegally. Most people are not exposed to that. So there's a thing of they're other. They are other, and they're rapists and murderers. So Trump is doing his job. He's sending the people in to deal with the rapists and murderers, and he's fixing it. And ultimately, one, it's a made-up problem to begin with, and the solution is a made-up solution. It is a TV show. You're literally watching a show. So when you're watching this TV show, you see the agents going in and getting the rapists and murderers. And
it's
then,
like watching Cops.
And then it's like watching, and then so the people said no. Well, they're the enemy because they're stopping the rapists and murderers from being removed from the country. So send in the National Guard. Like people, like, I'm sure, like even growing up, whenever the National Guard, if there's an emergency, even with the recent tornadoes, it's like, well, the National Guard is here. They're here to help in major emergency situations, and you're making this a major emergency situation when it wasn't to begin with. And then we have a fetish in this country for the military. Military service is very important, but for the average everyday person who is educated by the military on video games and on TV and isn't intimately involved with what military service actually is, it sounds great. He's sending in the Marines. They're fixing the rapists and murderers. And all it is a well-produced TV show that he's given for free because the media almost has to cover it. And it's all made up. And it's all to put the public in an emotionally charged state, so that people aren't thinking clearly. And I'm never, and I know another argument that will always come up about this in the government. I'm not one to trust the government with much. I just assume half of the conspiracy theories are at least half true.
Half true.
However, that doesn't make any of this right. And that's where it's important for the public to use their judgment and their brain cells and actually make a conscious decision about what kind of country you want to live in and what you're willing to stand for as a human. And ripping apart a family when you don't have to, when it's unnecessary, is not right. Mm-mm. It's just not right. And the thing about what's happening is it's not even that anybody's advocating for us not knowing who's in the country, because I think we should know everybody that's in the country. I think we should know where everybody, especially if they're here and they're not citizens, right? I think that it's fair for the government to know who they are and where they are. I don't have an issue with that. But what's happening here is not only unnecessary, it's disrespectful to humanity as humanity, and it's disrespectful to everybody that's being set in to help address it. It's disrespectful to those guard troops. It's wasting the military's time and resources. And if you almost as a policy have to wear a mask just to do your job, as many of these ICE agents are, then you got to ask what's wrong. Like, why won't they show their faces? I don't know if anybody's thought about that, but it's like most of the time when you see the ICE raids, they're all masked up.
California lawmakers are currently introducing legislation that law enforcement is no longer allowed to wear masks when doing their job. I don't like it.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that. I don't think there should be a law for it.
It shouldn't be a law for it.
Because just to be clear, like there are some, like if you're a SWAT officer, for example, and you're doing actual drug raids,
yeah,
or various sorts of work, I don't have an issue with you wearing a mask.
It's not. No. It's a silly thing, and sometimes California goes overboard with what they're doing. They just do, and they swing one way and then they swing back the other. What needs to be considered is that the mask became a bigger thing during COVID. So like there's no reason, like we don't need legislation in regards to it. It just, anywho, no, that's not what I was gonna say. What I was gonna say is the training that our military gets is to protect our country. And I'm not going to say video games have desensitized us to it, because I believe that people inherently understand. Our military are trained to be able to defend our country, meaning if they have to choose, they choose to lay down their lives and or kill someone in defending our country. For the U.S. Marines to be deployed on American soil in the midst of something that was not...
It wasn't a threat to the country.
It's not a threat to the country. It is a misuse of our military, and I don't care about the powers. I'm not talking about his power. I'm not saying that he can't command the military to show up in places. Yet, showing up on American soil, the last president who did it, someone said it was back like in the early 1900s. It wasn't. It was the last time it was done, it was in 1992. It was when LA was burning. That's the last time it was done. But it was Bush. He sent in everybody. Yet LA was burning.
That was an actual national disaster.
No, it wasn't.
Was it the riots?
It was after the riots. After the riot became a verdict.
Yeah, that's an entirely different situation.
That's not the situation. And honestly, I can understand how people didn't understand what was happening in LA. Yet, just because you don't understand that it was happening doesn't mean, because I'm pretty certain that in 1992, when buildings were getting firebombed and things of that nature,
and people were getting dragged out
it was,
it was a whole.
It was a different situation.
You cannot even compare this
to see people yelling, and it's a group of middle-aged people yelling shame at ICE officers.
And not to finish your thought first.
No, it's just The military is not for that. And not only is it not for that, like, it hurts my heart that there are Americans, I'm not going to say so many, that there are Americans who even think that it's okay for the U.S. military to be deployed on American soil, not in a natural disaster, not in some, like, and I mean a big area got to be burning. Not
It has to be something that's so far that the local government is not able to handle.
And I mean, they have to be overrun. Like,
yeah,
you can't.
And they were nowhere. They were nowhere near. I mean,
They were peaceful until
completely peaceful, for the most part.
Yeah, it was peaceful
until he sent in the National Guard. Well, I don't even know if it got unpeaceful then. It didn't.
It didn't.
It never got to a level
because here's the thing: we haven't heard about people being. We haven't heard about arrests. That were made.
It hasn't happened. It's all a show.
Yeah.
And I just had a thought. I just lost it, but it'll come back. This whole thing is just mind numbing.
Are you gonna talk about Minnesota?
No.
Yeah, no.
We can. I mean, this is enough for now. We can leave it. I mean, we can leave most of this in LA because it says everything. I mean, everything is there.
Yeah, I know. I just.
That's what I was going to say.
Go ahead.
So one thing about a lot of this, even how it's being responded to, is that I'm gonna throw a couple of like off the top of the dome examples about how grown people and especially grown men need to behave. And there's something that as a man, when you're dealing with other men, you've got to know where the boundaries and lines are. And you also have to know, like, when you're entrusted with the safety of other people, there's a level of what we call self-control and that you have to have, especially as a man, but I think as a human too. This doesn't need to be gendered like that, but I think you'll understand where I'm going. Like, if you choose to be in a job where you're doing law enforcement, there is a time where I had all kinds of thoughts about law enforcement, but one thing I will say, and most of them are pretty positive and some of them not so much, but what I will say is that if you're going to choose to be in a job, then there's a level of thick skin that you have to have in order to do this job. Mm-hmm. And even as a man, or as a human walking around, there's a level of thick skin. Like if you were in a bar or in a club and somebody steps on your shoes, right? Like there's a time when that could have gotten you shot, depending on whose shoes you stepped on. Mm-hmm. Now, most average people would say to shoot somebody because somebody stepped on your shoes would be a bit out of line and a bit excessive, right? But that was a limit that some people had. It's like, you disrespected me by stepping on my shoes, so I'm going to pull out a gun and you just don't need to be alive anymore. Now, on the other end of it, somebody can step on your shoes and you can say, my bad. You can say, no problem, bro. Go on about your business. So if you are a grown person and you can't handle somebody stepping on your shoes, or you can't even handle somebody yelling in your face, even if they were to walk up and touch you on the shoulder, it's like, where is the line? And for the average person, the line is an actual imminent threat to your life or to your safety, right? Mm-hmm. And so we have this idea, like if you look at the protests and you look at what's happening in Los Angeles, that was the thing that you just said. The people that were protesting weren't putting their hands on ICE officers. In most cases, they weren't.
They weren't even throwing stuff.
They weren't even throwing stuff. They were just saying shame and go away. And if you were a big bad federal officer, you got your guns, you got your posse, you got your mask on, so nobody can even see who the heck you are, and you can't handle this middle-aged man or middle-aged woman or old lady saying shame to you, you need to get another job. You just need to go home because that's out of line. Now, I know we got this whole fetish about, oh yeah, we're putting on this huge TV show and they're in there handling business, getting the rapists and murderers out of the country, because that's literally what they're thinking. That's the logic. And if you're saying that these officers can't handle even that little bit of resistance, and you got to send in the whole the whole National Guard and not pay them, and then send in the military and waste their time, all because folks are walking around saying shame and no. It's like, think about where your priorities are, people. Because that's literally what's happening. There may be one or two outlying situations, but for the vast majority of the situations, that's the circumstance, especially in Los Angeles. And the only reason he's there and not in Texas is because California is a blue state, and he wants to make a big to-do about something and pick fights, public fights with people.
Oh, he's not targeting blue states. He's targeting blue cities.
Blue cities, correct. Well, California is a very unique situation in that. So, but he's targeting blue cities, and for the most part.
He just rolled out saying they're about to hit all the sanctuary cities. So Chicago, New York. Honestly, I think those are the only 3 sanctuary cities. So I don't know what there's no reason.
The reason is it's a TV show. like it's a well-produced TV show.
Lions don't worry about the opinions of lambs. That's it.
Well,
in that, he is a lamb. Sorry, he is fucking sheep waiting. Never mind.
Anyway, I think we're good. What do you think? We could talk all day about this, and I'm happy to continue. But
there was something else. I can't remember what it was. I guess it's gone. It was something related to LA, and it was something related to the protests. It wasn't just LA. It was something else. Yeah.
The protests were phenomenal, by the way, all over the country. And I saw a meme that said something to the effect of, like, when 3.5% of your population actually gets out on the street and does anything, then that's not a good omen for whatever's happening with that government at that time. And we were it was a blessing to watch. And what I will also say about all the protests that happened is that I have not heard of any governmental pushback from any of the protests. And if there was any, I just didn't hear about it. But I didn't hear about any military, police intervention, none of that. All the protests seemed to be peaceful, and they seemed to go on without a hitch. Even though you had red state governors all over the place calling in their National Guards, it's like nothing happened.
Yeah, I was gonna say
not a thing happened.
Missouri called in our National Guard. And so we have a National Guard here in the city. I think there's...
Well, they were here. They were also here because of the tornadoes as well. But that not to take away from...
No, they were activated specifically for the No King's Day.
What? Yeah, I know. Oh. Yeah. I'm pretty sure they were also activated for the tornado relief.
What?
I think
maybe
so.
with that bill that got passed.
But I could, hopefully I don't have that fact wrong. But
yeah.
It was beautiful to see. It was beautiful to see.
And it's interesting because the cross section of people there, their boards said a lot about who they were and what the thing was. Mm-hmm. It is a huge. It's a very big demographic. Yeah. And it crosses age, it crosses gender.
Race.
It crosses race. Black people are still sitting down, which is I'm grateful. Keep sitting down. It ain't time yet.
Nope.
So yeah, there was a couple of us out there, but yeah, keep sitting down. Not yet. No. And so Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's it. That's fine. I'm like, yeah, we're good. Excuse us for being angry.
I don't think we're. I think that we're like I struggle with it myself because it's not that I'm not a political person, quite the contrary. But I want to be responsible in things that I say, and I don't think it's appropriate to just I want to be heard by as wide a population. I don't need to say stuff just to talk to people that agree with me.
Yeah.
And so but this is serious. There's something that I've been thinking of about this whole idea of wokeness, and they've made it a bad thing. And it's like, I would rather be awake than asleep. Like, all the things happen all the time, and people are fighting to stay asleep. Like, what is that? And when you really uncover and look at what's going on, and about all of these things. And I'm no big defender of the government. I think there are a lot of things that have to be looked at, that have to be interrogated, that have to be worked through. But this particular thing that we're talking about with how a lot of this stuff is being handled right now, and the things that we're inundated with on a daily basis in the country, like, it's something that is infuriating.
I don't remember what it was.
Go ahead.
So the last time there was this huge immigration push, it was prior to World War I or II, probably two.
Prior to.
Yeah, prior to two, and so there was a mass deportation, like just putting people on trains who had never been to Mexico in their lives, and they sent all the folks away. And then World War II happened, and they begged everybody to come back.
And we're close to, like, regardless of what's on the other side of that, like, whatever this is, it's affecting everything.
Yeah, it is.
It's affecting tourism. It's affecting work.
Canada is actively. I didn't know that Utah was a huge Canadian destination, but apparently it is. I was reading an article about that today, about how like 5 destinations have seen a 28% drop each destination, 28%. And I was like, 28%?
That's a lot.
And I'm like,
that's enough to tank something.
Yeah, well, and it was Phoenix, and it was 2 cities in Arizona, Utah, Las Vegas. Where was the 5th one? Because they were all places that I wasn't.
That you wouldn't even normally think about.
I mean, I love Arizona, but yet I just don't normally think Salt Lake City.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they were like, it's a 28% drop, and everyone is talking about it, and and one of the things that they said, well, actually, the 2 things they said. The economy is rough right now, even for Canadians, and the tariffs. So it's a boycott on coming to the United States because the tariff back and forth, and their Canadian dollar is like 73 cents on the dollar or something. And I'm like,
so they pay a 20% premium on their dollar just to do stuff here.
Yeah, and they were coming for vacations and.
That's I mean, on one hand that's infuriating. On the other hand, it warms my heart, and it's only because I don't think that we're going to get through this without people actually feeling the results of their choices, and we're not like people would love. I actually really love this country, but I also know that there are other places in the world, and there are other people in the world that love their country too. And so it's nice to have a world where we can share our love for our countries with other people from different countries. And to have this antagonistic attitude towards the world, one, they don't have to stand for it. Like, they're proving it. Like, they don't. Nobody owes America any business. Nobody owes America anything, and we don't owe them anything either. However, ultimately, We can choose to figure this all out together or go into isolationism, and we won't survive very long being isolationists. It's not even really in our interest to do so. Some people may disagree with that, but that's my opinion. It's not in our interest to be isolationists. What do we actually get out of it?
So, I read y'all a lot. And so I was reading about, there's a list of countries, there's only one country in the world that actually produces enough food to sustain itself. And that's Guyana. And I was like, whoa. In the United States, we overproduce wheat and corn. And like, basically, we barely produce, our percentages are like single digits in regards to
a lot of the other stuff.
And we overproduce
soy. I think is one of them.
But we overproduce cattle too, but not. And I'm like, it's interesting that we overproduce cattle because I'm like, where are they?
Well, I mean, that's a whole nother podcast, but I think ultimately what we're both saying in different ways is that we actually need other countries.
We do.
And so this idea that we're gonna, and I think the average middle American, like the experience that most people have is you go to the grocery store and you see meat nicely packaged, you see the vegetables there in the vegetable produce area and all this stuff, but there's no thought as to where that actually came from,
and who actually did the work
to get it there,
to pick, to package,
and so there's an information gap there that doesn't help the average person. And I'm not trying to say I'm not trying to make a judgment about that person. I'm just saying, hey, this is a thing, and are you thinking about that part of the conversation? And I don't think most people do. I think most people are happy to go to the grocery store and pay whatever they pay and walk out without a care in the world as to how it got there. When in fact, the system that got all of those things that you buy, including our phones, including our electronics, this microphone, this camera that we're on, even these clothes, there's an international system that created, that built all of this. And
we're a part of it.
And we're a part of it. We're an integral part of it. And it's not to say that America, maybe we don't want to attempt to do more, but one just off the cuff thought that I have is that some of these electronic manufacturing facilities that are required to build some of this stuff take literally years to turn up. And so this idea that somebody's going to come in and say, oh, we're going to bring manufacturing back, or we're going to do any XYZ 1, 2, 3 things, like there's a lag between that statement and actually making it happen that is literally years. So that person who says that, it might not even be in power long enough to see the result of what they said, because that's just physically how long it takes.
It's a 10-year window.
It's a 10-year. It's depending on the facility, but yeah, it can be up to 10 years.
So, the something I read in regards to that,
it's mainly chips and stuff,
is that if this were real, if the statements that are made about manufacturing and all of that were real, these conversations would have been taken to manufacturers about 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Because what would have happened is they would have had to ramp up production of what they make already at the regular. They would have had to create a profit margin where they can then put new infrastructure in place, as well as because not only does the infrastructure have to be built, they have to have the profit margin to pay the American workers.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying, so a burger place here in St. Louis, really good, High Point, they're paying $18 and change an hour. So where our economy sits right now, and even a lot of the fast food chains, like they're paying 15
Sometimes
to
20.
$15 to $20 an hour, depending on which fast food place it is. Where our economy sits right now, the work of manufacturing, depending upon what it is, depending on whether or not it's safe, depending upon whether or not you're going to offer training and things like that, depending upon the benefits that you're going to offer that labor force, they will have to beat fast food. So that hourly rate, that hourly rate would need to start at minimum 24 to 25.
And probably closer to, for a skilled labor, up to $40-$50 an hour.
Oh, I was gonna say skilled.
More.
Skilled labor.
I mean, be off the charts.
They will be their management team.
So I mean, and I hate that I introduced that because that's literally a whole nother podcast. But the point of all of it is that there is a like we might have the thought that we're just going to do all this stuff and we're going to do it by ourselves. I'm not even going to say well, it's a bad idea to have more manufacturing here. I'm not going to say that. What I am going to say is nobody wants to pay thousands of dollars for the cell phone. No, you don't want to pay $3,000 for your iPhone. The last statistic that I said that if we brought manufacturing to America, your iPhone would be $3,000, $3,500. And so
isn't it already there?
It's not.
Oh.
The iPhone is usually it's no more than 2, but that's for like the latest and greatest, close to 2. It's like 1,800 or something. Okay. But that's for like the top tier. The average iPhone you can get for way less than that. But but the point is that nobody's trying to do that, and so there is a result of this thought that manufacturing, and ultimately it's because people are hurting, and we are in a time where people are struggling financially or struggling with the economy, and we may talk about in another podcast any ideas we have about that. But demonizing immigrants is not an answer.
Not the root.
To fixing anything. It just makes us look bad. It makes us look incompetent as a country, and it's disrespectful to what America was really about, because most of the people here are from here to begin with. We're all immigrants of some kind or another.
And it's what's my take on it is it's disrespectful to ourselves.
Yeah.
Because I don't have to consider where my estate was butchered. I don't have to think about where the ground beef came from. I don't have to think about the apple. I don't have to think about any of the things that make my life easy because I can go to a grocery store and get it. There are people who are supporting our system who may be immigrants, yet that's the other side. That's the other part of the conversation that isn't being had. Retroactively, this administration, they are retroactively taking people's legal status. People who hold green cards, people who have gone through the process and are in the middle of the process, and sending letters out and things of that nature, sending letters out dated for the day that it's sent, saying you have 2 weeks to leave the country. You have 30 days to leave the country because you're now considered illegal. Well, wait. And so I was reading someone who felt like posting on Facebook. He said his U.S. citizenship cost him $30,000, 2 lawyers, and 7 years as a single person, not someone who had
a family.
Not someone who had a family, just for with him not marrying anybody, and the people who sponsored him, who were American citizens, who weren't firstborn, who weren't related to him in any other kind of way other than the kindness of their daggone heart. They had to help him because in the citizenship process, when you're coming and you're attempting to get citizenship, you have to show that you are financially stable. I worked with a couple whose children are still in their home country. They have an 18-year-old and a 14-year-old still in their home country because the husband came over and worked. And I worked with him, he worked. Let's see. I was working about 5 days a week. He was working 6 days a week. So he would work 6 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
He 12-hour shifts. Had a second job that he would go to and work. He would do about, I think he did 20 hours at that job. Don't know how, but he made time to have a second job to show that he could financially support one person. He chose to bring his wife over so she could then they then replicated it, and they're in the process of replicating it to attempt to get their children here. But you have to show financial stability, which means you don't get food stamps, Medicaid, Medicare. Like, you're not here
utilizing
the
those
social
systems.
And when you're working
you're
those
actually,
hours, you're paying
paying
your taxes into it.
Yeah.
Because a traffic ticket could derail your citizenship process.
And so ultimately, the challenge with all of this is that it's a lot of smoke and mirrors. There's so many moving parts to this, and it's just it's really like you said, it's disrespectful to us as a population to even stand for it. And there's a lot of things to interrogate about the government, but this is not one of them. This is something that I am proud of the people that are standing up for this. I hope they keep standing up, and I hope we see some changes, and I hope that that we see changes sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
And,
I think that it's time for America to stop pointing fingers at other people for our problems. Rape and murder isn't new to America. And it's not going to be and blaming people coming here. There's always bad people. No matter what.
It's just a weak argument on its face. I mean, once you get past the charged nature of those two things, because those are two of the worst things that you could possibly say. Once you get past that and just look at like with the facts, some of which we've talked about here, it's an absurd idea. It's like come on, we need more.
Yeah,
we need more. All
Maybe
right.
we'll talk about grape one day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fighting Foolishness, everybody. Thank you for joining. Please like and subscribe.
Comment and share.
Comment and share. Any ideas, anything you might think we should address in a podcast, hit us up in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.
Yes.
Love you guys and peace out.
Keep fighting foolishness.
Keep fighting foolishness.